You are listening to rudolfsteineraudio.com. If you are listening to the podcast of this, it is located at rudolfsteiner.podbean.com. Please consider becoming a patron. As well, there are two publishing houses, steinerbooks.org in America and rudolfsteinerpress.com in England, who have given me permission to do these recordings. Please consider patronizing them as well. This is a reading of Collected Works, Volume 282 by Rudolf Steiner, a cycle of 19 lectures entitled Speech and Drama, translated by Mary Adams. This is Lecture 16, entitled The Work of the Stage from its More Inward Aspect, Destiny, Character, and Plot, given on the 20th of September 1924. My dear friends, we shall find that a study of the history of dramatic art can throw considerable light for us on the problems that face us in that field today. For only gradually has dramatic art made its way into the evolution of mankind. What for us comprises the essentially dramatic has really only found its way, bit by bit, into the evolution of mankind, and as we know too well, inartistic features that are hostile to the development of the art have also been continually intruding themselves. And now a time has come when to all that the centuries have so far produced, many quite new things have to be added. For mankind has advanced in evolution. Anyone who has to take part in the staging of plays will, moreover, receive encouragement and stimulus for his work by making a deep, esoteric study of plays that have, at different epochs, provided a standard or basis for the development of acting and of stage work altogether. There are three important factors to be borne in mind when we are considering the production of a play. I do not mean that we must adhere to them pedantically, but rather that we should have an artistic perception of where and to what extent each enters into the play we have in hand. They are important for us, because they have been so first for the author. They have influenced him in his composition of the play, of that written text, which, as we saw, is for the actor neither more nor less than what the score is for the musician. Taking these three in order, we find that the first hovered like an overpowering presence above the drama of ancient times, the drama that originated in the mysteries. I mean destiny. Look at the plays of ancient Greece. Everywhere we are shown how powerfully destiny works into human life. Man himself is of very little account. It is destiny, heaven-sent destiny, that works into his life all the time. Realizing this, we can appreciate the genuine artistic impulse that lay behind the tendency to obliterate, more or less, whatever was individual in the human being, giving him a mask, and even going so far as to make use of instruments in order to conceal the individual quality of his voice. We can well understand how this conception of God-given destiny led to an effacement of the human individuality. Looking back then to the drama of ancient times, we find that it displayed on the stage the grand and all-powerful working of destiny. Therein lay its achievement. We need only call to mind the tragedies concerned with the myth of Oedipus to see at once how true this is. There are, however, two things that occupy a prominent place in modern drama, of which you will find little or no sign in these early dramas, where the attention is centered upon the working of destiny. As a matter of fact, they could only find their way into drama as the age of consciousness drew near for man, the age of the spiritual soul. The interchange of love between human beings could not be dramatized on the stage in the way it is today, until the souls of men had begun to receive each its own more individual form. In the drama of ancient times you will, it is true, find love, but a love that bears the stamp of destiny and is dependent also on social relationships. An outstanding example is the figure of Antigone in the well-known play of Sophocles. But that love between the sexes which enters later with such compelling power into drama, even itself forms and shapes the drama, becomes possible only with the dawn of the age of consciousness. The other thing that you will miss in the early days of dramatic art is humor. Look, for example, at the plays of Aristophanes, who has been dubbed the scoffer, and compare them with the plays of the time when the impulse of the age of consciousness was beginning to make itself felt. You may take any number of plays of the Aristophanes type, and you will constantly find satyrs taking part in them, but you will look in vain for the humor that sets something free in man, that gives wings to human life. That does not show itself in drama until man is entering upon the age of consciousness. Note, too, that this is also the time when men's gaze, as they look upon the stage, begins to be turned aside from destiny, begins rather to take a kind of delight in the way that man makes himself master and shaper of destiny. Attention and interest are now in fact being increasingly directed, instead of to destiny, to character. So here we have come to the second factor that we have to consider in staging a play: character. The dramatist puts on the stage men and women as we meet with them in life, and as his presentation of them develops. They become more and more interesting. We shall not yet find a power of vision that can command the whole compass of man's individuality. People are still portrayed rather more as types, and we have, instead of the old masks, the character masks. Among the Latin peoples who took such delight in drama and were so gifted in its performance, we find these character masks, striking evidence of a dawning interest in man as an individual with a character of his own. The feeling for character still labors under the limitations of this connection with type. It is nevertheless the human being, the individual human being, who is, so to speak, given the mask of the character type to which he is adjudged to belong. There was also a very good understanding in those days of the close relation of human beings to their environment. The character mask, it was felt, can be truly appreciated only when it is seen on the background of the part of the world to which it belongs. Hence the folk masks of those times. We find them particularly in Italy, but other countries soon began to follow suit. These folk masks bear witness to an interest, not merely in men and women, nor even merely in character types. They mark the beginning of an interest in what character owes to milieu. And this interest spread far and wide, reaching even to Shakespeare, in whom we can still clearly recognize an appreciation of the bearing of milieu upon character. The Italian would observe, for example, that persons of social distinction, who have a certain standing in life and who have also money in their purses, and are accordingly able to maintain a good position in society, such persons, he would observe, are to be met with especially in Venice. And so in the folk plays of those times, the Pantalone, for that was the name given to this character, would always appear on the stage in Venetian dress. He would tend also to speak with something of a Venetian accent. There, then, we have one of these character masks. We are, you see, coming away from the working of destiny, for here it is man who stands before us and claims our attention. Let us now look at another character mask that meets us in these plays. Parenthesis. There were, you must know, hundreds of such plays, literally hundreds, genuine products all of the Italian genius. And you will find the wealthy, quote, merchant of Venice, close quote, in every one of them. Close parenthesis. The second character mask is the man of learning, and he appears in the form of a shrewd and clever lawyer. This clever lawyer always hails from Bologna, and wears the traditional robes of a lawyer who has graduated in the University of Bologna. That then is the second. The third is the scoundrel, the dodger, known as Brigella. He comes from a common people and is always in company with the harlequin, the simpleton, who also hails from the common people. These two fellows, the scoundrel and the simpleton, are from Bergamo, and will always be dressed in Bergamese style. And then there were the serving women, ladies of some experience in life, who incidentally were capable, for the most part, of getting the control of the household into their own hands. It appears that in those days such ladies generally came from Rome. Their costumes were accordingly in Roman style. The writers and producers of these plays were, you see, observant. No detail escaped them. There, then, we have the transition from destiny to character. You can see what a thoroughgoing change it wrought in drama. And I think even the brief sketch I have given you of its history will help you to understand how important it is for the student of dramatic art to study this development of character in drama, learning to observe how characters group themselves in types, and how character grows out of milieu. When he has worked through such a study, the student will be more fitted to undertake the individual parts of the modern stage. He will be able to tackle them with elemental force and energy. As he studies these plays, the student will also realize what a liberating and lively humor the people of those days possessed. For it was not merely the authors who were responsible for the plays. As a matter of fact, authors did not play a role of any particular importance in those days. The text of a play, as it came from their hands, could not even truthfully be called a score for the actor. Before it could go down with the audience, he would have to add to it considerably from his own resources. It was quite taken for granted that the actor would supply witty sallies here and there on his own account. Dramas of this kind show unmistakably that destiny is disappearing from the stage, and the spectators are being presented with plays where it is the characters that determine the action. This is also the moment when the stage begins to realize that it has to reckon with the audience, that it cannot ignore them. And now, from destiny and character, from out of these two, emerges our third factor in drama, action or plot. At the opening of a play, before the plot began to unfold and reveal how character and destiny are at work there, an exclamator, as he was called, for they used the Latin word, would come forward, rather in the way the prologue does in our Christmas plays, and give a kind of summary of the moral of the play. For the stage did a great deal in those days to influence social life and behavior. You are not to conclude from this that the manners and morals of those times were anything to boast of. On the contrary, it implies that they were rather loose, and that there was ample reason for the stage to do something for their improvement. It is always important, you know, to look at facts from the right angle. I would like now to describe to you one such drama. Do not take it as an exact description of a particular one. As I said before, there are hundreds of them. It will, however, be characteristic and will provide you with a good illustration of what I want to say later. Let us suppose then that at the beginning of one of these dramas we are faced with a situation that is created entirely by the typical characters that are there in the play. In a spot that may perhaps be not very far away from where we are now meeting, some gypsies have made their encampment. The gypsies are referred to as the heathen, in quotes. The play proceeds somewhat as follows. Parenthesis, the story corresponds quite well with one or another of these plays, but my intention is to make my description general and typical. Close parenthesis. We have then, to begin with, the man Rudy and his wife Greta, and they are talking together. Rudy tells Greta she must take care to lock up all their valuables, because the heathen are in the neighborhood. Things are sure to be stolen, for the heathen live by stealing. Greta replies that she has, of course, already done this. She does not need any reminder from him. Quote, but I tell you what, you drunken lout, she goes on to say, you put far more money than the heathen steal into the pockets of the alehouse keeper, and there's got to be an end of that. It can't go on any longer. Close quote. Rudy is rather taken aback, for Greta is a woman of force and energy. After standing silent for a minute or two, he heaves a deep sigh and stammers out, Well, I suppose I'd better go to the gypsies and get them to tell me what a bad lot I am. After all, they're fortune-tellers as well as thieves." "You great fool," says Greta, "to believe the gypsies. It's all nonsense what they say. You'd much better save your money instead of running after them." But Rudy is not going to be put off. Before he sets out, however, he goes to the stables and warns the stableman too about the heathen, ordering him to lock up the stables and carry the manure out to the fields. And now the stableman gets talking and discloses to Rudy that Greta has hidden away in the stable 8 good Rhenish gulden, in those times quite a small fortune. He, the stableman, knows the spot where they are buried. Then the, in quotes, stupid Rudy begins to be sly. But first of all he goes off to the gypsies to have his fortune told. So here destiny enters the story, but note how. People no longer believe in it. It is all left to the gypsies. The gypsy woman says to Rudy, quote, "Well, my man, you are a thoroughly good sort, but you have a bad-tempered wife, and she makes life miserable for you. And you yourself, you drink too much." Close quote. Heavens alive, thinks Rudy, she knows a lot. There's something in fortune-telling after all. Quote, "But now, look here," continues the gypsy. "You go and get yourself some better clothes and walk about the village with an air, and you'll be made headman of the village. Only you'll have to drink less." Close quote. Rudy is delighted with the idea. And now what the stableman told him will come in very useful. First, however, the gypsy wants her fee. Why, of course. But Rudy hasn't any money. Greta never gives him any. Then he has a bright idea. Quote, "You told me just now that if I put on fine clothes I shall be made headman of the village. When I am, I'll help you gypsies in your thieving. That shall be your payment." Close quote. This suits the gypsy woman splendidly. A headman's connivance will be of more worth to the gypsies than any fee. And now Rudy goes back home, his head full of the idea that he must get some fine new clothes and be made headman of the village. So he goes to the stable, digs up the 8 gulden, and hands them to the stableman to take to the neighboring town. Arriving there, the stableman goes to the wool merchant and says to him, quote, "My master, who lives outside the town, wants to see some materials of different colors. I am to take them to him to choose from. He is having some new clothes made, for he is going to be headman of the village." Close quote. Quote, "But I don't know your master," replied the merchant, "and how am I to know what might happen to my cloth?" Close quote. Quote, "Oh, don't you worry," says the stableman. "He's a perfectly honorable man. You let me take the cloth, it'll be quite all right." Close quote. The 8 gulden the stableman pockets, and the rolls of stuff he turns into money in some way of his own. And so he comes back empty-handed, having cheated his master of the 8 gulden and the merchant of the rolls of cloth. His master inquires what has happened. Quote, "I've left the 8 gulden with the merchant," replies the stableman, "and he says you must go yourself and choose the material in his shop. Meantime, he has the money safe." Close quote. The money is, of course, not with the merchant at all. The stableman has taken it for himself. At this point, a scene is inserted where we are shown Greta pouring out her woes to a friend of hers. She has discovered that the gulden she buried in the stable had disappeared. What if the cow has eaten them and dies in consequence? And now Rudy makes his way to the wool merchant's, and behold, the merchant has not the cloth. Rudy hasn't it either. The merchant has also not the money, nor has Rudy. The stableman is standing by, and the merchant declares he will sue him. He will, he says, put the matter in the hands of a lawyer, and he'll find a first-rate one. He will. Here they come, you see, the character types. Well, Rudy and his stableman go home again, but a little while later, a messenger comes running in great haste, beginning, in the good stage instinct of those days, to call out to them while he is still a long way off, summoning them both to come at once to the wool merchant's. As soon as they arrive there, the merchant starts inveighing loudly against the stableman, and one can well understand it. He becomes quite abusive, and rails against him, calling him all sorts of hard names. The man feels terribly insulted, and declares that he will, on his part, bring an action against the merchant, and they will soon see what comes of that. The merchant raises no objection. He knows he has right on his side and feels confident of the issue. The stableman, however, is a kind of Brighella, and it is he who procures the cleverer lawyer. And now the trial begins, the stableman's lawyer having in the meantime instructed him how to behave in court. The judge puts his learned questions all in best Bologna manner. The peasant grows more and more bewildered, confuses the cloth with the money, and the money with the cloth. When he should be answering about the 8 gulden, he keeps talking of the cloth, and vice versa, and all because the lawyer puts him out by talking incessantly. And now it is the stableman's turn to be questioned, but all he says in reply is 5. A fresh question is put to him. Once more he answers 5. Still another question, again the same reply, 5. The lawyer has advised him, you see, to be completely stupid and say nothing but 5. Eventually the judge finds this too silly. Quote, "He's just crazy. One can do nothing at all with a fellow like that," close quote, and he sends the parties home. And so the whole affair comes to a humorous end. And now it turns out that in the course of the conversation between them, the stableman had promised his lawyer the 8 gulden. These the lawyer now receives, in payment for his advice to say nothing but 5. The stableman has the cloth. As for the peasant and the merchant, they have had all their trouble for nothing. The spectator, however, goes home well pleased. He has enjoyed watching the characters unfold as the play proceeds. Pieces of this kind were played by the 100, full of true humor and natural elemental humor of the common folk, and they were well played, for the players put their whole heart into their acting. Thus, at the dawn of the age of consciousness, does the drama of character push its way into the drama of destiny, and take root there and grow. That is how the drama of character first began. And you will not easily find for your students a better subject for study than these very plays, for they are built up with quite remarkable skill. They can well form a basis for the study of delineation of character. A school of dramatic art should arrange for courses of instruction in the history of the whole treatment of drama, and especially of character, beginning with the end of the 15th century. This kind of character drama was popular throughout the Latin countries at the end of the 15th century, and also in Switzerland. Afterward, it spread to Germany, and by the 16th century was everywhere in vogue, that is to say, at secular times of the year. For the Christmas plays are survivals of the drama of destiny. In them we see destiny working in from the worlds beyond. So that we have in those times, on the one hand, within the rather austere forms of Christian tradition, a continued adherence to destiny, and then also this original and elemental upspringing of character in drama. Both are there side by side, and that is what makes this second stage in the evolution of drama an extraordinarily fruitful field of study. The mask of ancient times, that actually hid the human being, has now given place to the character mask, and we shall soon be approaching the time when we have before us on the stage human individualities. But please remember that there are good and well-founded reasons for making a special study in our day of this first beginning of character in drama. A student can learn a great deal from such a study. Let me remind you at this point of the development we traced in Schiller's dramas a few days ago. We were studying this development from a rather different point of view. We can, however, clearly see that Schiller was all the time experimenting between the two kinds of play, inclining now more to the drama of destiny, now again more to the drama of character. Highly gifted dramatist as he was, Schiller did not know how to bring together the elements of character and destiny. Take Wallenstein. That's the title of his play. We cannot truthfully say that destiny is here an organic part of the drama. Destiny and character are joined up externally, rather in the way one cements bricks. Then again, later on, entitled Die Braut von Messina, we find Schiller once more trying, as it were, to drag in destiny. Only in Demetrius' title does he at length, after many attempts, succeed in weaving together destiny and character, weaving them together to form genuine dramatic action. Character drama is important also for opening the way to comedy. True preparatory steps in that direction had been taken in Roman times, for there was, in Rome a kind of anticipation of the age of consciousness. But it is tragedy that stands in the foreground throughout the centuries of classical antiquity. Satire will not infrequently come to expression in some comic afterpiece, but we do not find what can properly be called comedy until, with the coming of the age of consciousness, love and humor make their appearance on the stage. If you can succeed in carrying in your mind's eye a clear picture of how drama has evolved, that will help you in your work as producer. You will then be able to approach with the right mood and feeling, on the one hand, plays where the more tragic and solemn elements prevail, and on the other hand, plays that are in a lighter vein and belong more in the realm of comedy. Your study will have given you fresh guidance for the staging of the two kinds of play. Consider first how it is with tragedy. Simply from the insight that you have acquired in this kind of study, you will go to work in the following way. Please do not imagine it a matter of theories and definitions. What you have to do is to prove by experience how you yourself develop an insight that can give birth to artistic creation. That is the only right way, and it is what I have been trying to show you in today's lecture. The first part of a tragedy, sometimes called the Exposition, where the spectators are to be made acquainted with a situation, where their interest has to be aroused, will have to be played slowly. And the slowness should be achieved not so much by slow speaking or acting as by pauses. Pauses between the speeches, pauses even between the scenes. This will ensure that you make contact with your audience. They will then the more easily unite themselves inwardly and sympathetically with the situation. But now as the play proceeds, new persons or events intervene, and it becomes uncertain how things will turn out. This is the middle of the play, where the plot reaches its climax. Here you will again need a rather slow tempo, but the slowness has this time to be in the speaking and in the gesturing. The play will thus still move slowly, but without pauses. Not, of course, entirely so. The speaker must have time to take breath, and the spectator too. But you should definitely shorten the pauses, and to that degree slightly quicken the tempo. Then comes the third part, which has to bring the solution. If this last part were played in the same tempo, it would leave the audience a little sour and dissatisfied. It is important to increase the pace here and let the play end in a quicker tempo. Here then, in this third part of the play, there has to be an inner quickening of tempo, showing itself both in speech and in gesture, so that in tragedy, number 1, in slow tempo pauses, number 2, in slow tempo without pauses, number 3, in quickened tempo. If these stages are observed, your acting will not fail of those imponderable qualities that make for contact with the audience. And you will find that the right tempo for speech and gesture comes of itself, out of the feeling that your study and training beget in you. Thus the main point for the production of tragedy is that everything be in right measure and proportion. Something quite else comes into consideration for comedy. Our modern plays stand rather between the two, so that for their production one can learn from both. When we come to comedy, it is character that begins to take the prominent place. Such a piece as I described just now can be very helpful to you if you want to learn how to set about producing a comedy. For plays of this kind, abounding in the simple, primitive humor of the people, can always be begun in the way I will now describe. The first thing is to see that your actor, who will reveal his character in his speaking, expresses himself with an instinctive enjoyment of his part, so that the audience feel at once, yes, there he is, the Pantaloon. Today, of course, we put individual men and women on the stage, not types. Nevertheless, we can set to work on the artistic shaping of our comedy on the same lines. That is, begin by letting the characters display themselves in their speech and gesture, and in no uncertain terms. We need not go so far as some miserable producers who, for example, if they put a barber on the stage, think it necessary he should be ostentatiously scraping the lather off a customer's chin. No occasion for grotesque demonstrations of that sort. But we should take pains in this first part of the play to let the several characters stand out in strong relief. As you see, we are here not concerned, as in tragedy, with the measure or tempo of the acting, but rather with its content. As we go on toward the middle of the play, the interest will center on the various conflicting factors that emerge and that leave us in some doubt as to how it is all going to end. And here it would actually be a little risky to continue entering with intensity into the individual characters. Rather must the emphasis be laid on the plot. The whole character of the speaking must center the hearer's attention on the plot. At this point, the earlier comedies favored the inventive actor, for the book of words left him extraordinarily free. He could extemporize here and there, expressing his astonishment, for instance, when something happens that gives the whole plot an unexpected turn, and so forth. Actors were in this way able, on their own initiative, to emphasize certain incidents or features in the plot. And then at the end of a comedy, particular emphasis should be laid on destiny. This is important. The acting must show how destiny breaks in upon the course of events and brings it all to a happy conclusion. So comedy, number one, the emphasis is on the characters. Second part, or the middle of the comedy, the emphasis is on the plot. And the end of the comedy, the emphasis is on destiny. If one is to produce a comedy successfully, with emphasis first on the characters, then on the plot, and finally on the working of destiny, one must of course do one's best to acquire a lively and sympathetic understanding of what destiny and character and plot are in their essential nature. There is something more that the actor can do. Latent within him are deep feelings and perceptions, and these he should now evoke. What I am going to recommend may seem to you, my dear friends, to be rather external, but you should not on that account belittle it. If you will receive it and follow it out earnestly and with understanding, it will have a wonderful effect. It will awaken in your heart and soul a fine perception for how you are to set about acting, first tragedy and then comedy. And as you continue to live with it in meditation, you will also be helped to carry into real meditative experience the exercises of a more general nature in connection with your calling that I have already given for your meditation and concentration. Take, for example, what I showed you the other day when we drew the circle of the vowels and found on one side of the circle the development of tragedy, and on the other side the development of comedy. Imitate in your soul the path followed by a dramedy of tragedy, and your soul will be so attuned that it will develop the skill required for the speaking and producing of your tragedy. Where a meditation is intended to prepare us for a right treatment of tragedy, very much will depend on how far we are able, during the meditation, to attain inwardly what I described yesterday as liberation from our spoken part. This, my dear friends, must first be attained. We have to carry our preparation of the part up to the point where we have such command of it that we could go through it in our sleep. And then we must be able also to look at it, as it were, from without, taking an active and sympathetic interest in it and in the whole speaking of it, that speaking which we ourselves have created and formed, entering into it with heart and feeling, and also with will and with thought. The actors of an older time were given meditations to prepare them for their task. And I would like now to give you a brief formula on the same lines. Approaching the words in the mood that belongs to tragedy, try to concentrate your soul, with all your inner warmth, into just that mood that you need for the understanding of tragedy, for that kind of understanding which has actual formative power. And you will see as you meditate the words, you will attain this understanding. But you will need to repeat the meditative preparation over and over again. Go through it now and then when you have a few moments' leisure. You might be taking a walk one day and come upon a secluded spot where you can sit and think quietly for a little. Here then are the words, Ach, this is merely a preparatory interjection. Ach, Fatum, du hast stark mich umfasst, nimm weg den Fall in den Abgrund. I use the Latin term fatum because, to begin with, the soul must be held steadily in the ah and oo that evoke the tragic mood. Oo giving the suggestion of fear, and ah bespeaking awed amazement. Then when we come to stark mich, note the e enters in to take its part in the tragedy. Note too that farther on the vowels follow one another exactly as they do on the circle. Nimm weg den Fall in den Abgrund. If you will meditate these words, letting speak in them above all the feeling that is called up within you by that inner perception of sound which you have acquired in your training, then the words can become for you a kind of foundation upon which you can build the production of your drama of tragedy. Ach Fatum, du hast stark mich umfasst, nimm weg den Fall in den Abgrund. These words give the mood for tragedy. If for a long time you have repeatedly held before you such a meditation, then you will assuredly find the right inner mood for tragedy when you need it. For comedy, on the other hand, we have to go back to exercises of a more whimsical and subtle kind that were not practiced with the deep fervor that belongs to exercises for tragedy. Tragedy, you must remember, is a child of the mysteries. Nonetheless, even these exercises for humorous plays had a powerful esoteric influence. They were able actually to beget humor in the actor. And then they did not, as it were, take it back again, but let it pour full stream into the speaking. For if you are going to produce comedy, and please, when I use the word produce, do not take it in a merely external sense, you must be able to laugh in the words. I do not mean that you should be perpetually tittering. There are persons who like to draw attention to their remarks by constantly tittering and laughing a little as they speak, a habit that is apt to leave one with the impression that there is not much point or meaning in what is being said. For the actor to bring laughter into his feeling for sound is quite a different matter. It works as true art, in spite of its popularity. There were always, in an older time, comedians who did this, just as surely as in the early Middle Ages you find priests taking part in the solemn and sublime dramas that were directly connected with the church. And these early comedians, from among whom in course of time the first professional actors were recruited, labored always to attain to a deep inner understanding of their work on the stage. Here then I will again put before you a brief formula from olden times. It was not given merely to make tongue and palate elastic and plastic, a result that we saw could be attained by cultivating sound perception. These words, as one meditates them, turn into laughter. They must, of course, be meditated aloud, and then you will find you have to laugh. Try practicing aloud as often as you can this little string of words that I will now write on the blackboard. And as you say them, enter into the speaking of them with your whole heart and feeling. Itzt. This is really the word jetzt, now, but it has to be spoken here as itzt. Itzt fühl ich, wie in mir Linklock hü und Lockleck hi, völlig mir witzig bläst. And try to practice it, making the Linklock hü, this movement, and there's a drawing, and with Lockleck hi, this movement, and there's a second drawing, so that you repeat the whole formula thus. Itzt fühl ich, wie in mir Linklock hü und Lockleck hi, völlig mir witzig bläst. Try to live your way into this little formula, giving it its full development in speaking. It always 3 times in succession, with the Linklock hü pulling the upper lip upward and the lower downward so that the lips are puckered, and with the Lockleck hi flattening the creases out again. As you continue repeating it, it will make you laugh in your soul. You will laugh inwardly in your soul. Naturally, you cannot expect to attain that by deepening your feelings as for tragedy. And this is now to be your ideal, to carry into your speaking a laughing soul. Then will your work as producer be full of humor, the humor that has power of itself to produce and form a comedy. The end of Lecture 16.